I want to talk about something that's happened with the growth of Smash and the trade-offs that we really have as a result of being so big. So if you really look at the apexes in our major tournaments, our tournaments have been really large. So for the longest time, our largest tournament was around like 400 or the high 300s. And then we started hitting a little bit of a boom. Apex, I believe in 2013, hit a little over 500. And then we hit a big spike with Evo, with about like 700 to like 900 entrants, and then it just kind of blew up from there. Evo 2014 got 970, I believe, and so we've gone from a place where Genesis, you know, our big national of the summer, had like about 200, like mid 200s in entrants, to now we get 1,000 routinely. And so overall, for like from the TO standpoint, it's actually really hard to run a major now. Mainly because there's just so much at stake with running a major. It's unrealistic to just really see just a TO really run on his own cash. So if you run a local tournament, for example, I used to run locals. It was a low budget affair. So most likely you can get a card shop, you can get a school, or if you're part of a club on campus, you can probably get a decent sized room at a discounted rate. I used the church that I used to go to on Saturdays. They wouldn't use it, so I used to get a pretty decent deal on a venue. And card shops on off days will usually give it to you for really cheap. And so your financial risk for running a local is very small as a TO. If it runs short and you don't meet the quota, it's only like a couple of like, maybe at max a couple hundred out of your pocket, which usually never happens. But as you begin to scale up the number of I just want to just emphasize just how much it really costs to run a major. A lot of people think that as you get bigger and you have more, people, it should be cheaper, which should make sense if you follow economics of scale. So if you prototype something and you build 1 million of it, it should be cheaper. That's not always the case with Smash. Because as you need bigger venues, it gets a lot more expensive. So when you hit like 200 to 300 people, then you need to get a legit venue. And typically those small card shops, the church, you know, that campus room, it's not gonna accommodate to 200 to 300 people overall. And so you don't really need to really, let me rephrase that. You really need to begin to look at venues, and it's going to cost you a lot more money. Now 300 is quite, you know, decent size, but now like just multiply that by 5 to 7 and think of the venues that you can get for like 2,000 people, 2,000 to 2,500 people on average. This is a juggle guy calculation, but you need an average of 15 square feet per person. So you need a ballpark of a venue that's anywhere from 30 to 40,000 square feet. Now that's a lot. So consider like how expensive a wedding is and the type of venue you need for a wedding. And weddings are typically like 300 to 400 people for a larger one. And just think about how expensive that is just for one day. Now multiply that by 6 and multiply that by 4 days, and that's how much you get for. That's how much it actually costs to get a venue that's like the size of Apex. And if you don't believe me, so just the venue cost alone, if you like forego everything else, let's say you do a 3-day national, and then you need like a half day to set up and a half a day to break down. So that's about 4 days that you need the venue. It's going to cost anywhere from like $30,000 to $60,000. And if you don't believe me on that, go ahead and start looking at quotes for venues. And this also doesn't factor in the other things you need, like equipment. Does the venue provide furniture? Do they provide tables, chairs? Do they provide power strips? Do they provide projector screens? Do they provide a PA system? All that actually comes extra. And then you also have to make sure that they have enough electricity for 200 to 300 setups. You also have to get insurance just in case the building collapses. And so all these costs add up to a lot of money. You're also going to need security. You also need a venue that's nearby, like an airport, and it could be easily accessible. So you need a place that's near hotels. If you really calculate all the costs together, it's honestly in the 6 digits. It's honestly like, I wouldn't be surprised if Apex, if it were run at the larger venue, not the crappy hotel venue that was definitely undermanned, if it was anywhere around like $100,000. And I'm not surprised. I don't know this for sure or as a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised if Big House 5 was like anywhere in the ballpark of $80,000 to $100,000. Now, keep in mind that the Smash community is not a community that is sponsored heavily like League of Legends. Most of these majors are funded and organized by simple people like me. So you look at Juggle Guy and the decisions he had to make in regards to PM, and it's perfectly understandable because, you know, with Juggle Guy, you have to rent a venue like up to a year in advance because of the size of the venue. It's probably going to be reserved for other things, so you have to really plan ahead. But then you have this like $80,000 to $100,000 bill on your head, and most smashers are really bad at really planning ahead and signing up. So up until the week of the tournament, Juggle Guy really, or like the last deadline, Juggle Guy doesn't really know if he's gonna meet the deadlines. Let's run some numbers here. So let's say like venue fee is like $50, give or take. And let's say you only get half the people. Well, then you still have a $40,000 looming over your head in debt that potentially may or may not work out. And that's actually a really scary thought for just an individual. There was an FGC TO that said, his name, who goes by the name Kites or Keats, Keits, who said it's not really feasible for an individual to really run a tournament anymore, just because there's just so much burden. And if you guys remember Plank, he was actually a really good TO. Pound 4, Pound 3 were great tournaments, but then he ran Pound 5 and he was going by projections of expected. You know, if you look at the rate of how Smash was growing in Melee and Brawl, it made sense to see where his estimates lied for Pound 5, and they fell short. So more or less, Pound 4 and Pound 5 were roughly the same size, and Plank was banking on it growing bigger. And as a result, he fell really short, and you guys know the story. He had to use the venue fee to pay the hotel, the contract, because he fell short. And not only that, he actually had to deplete his bank account to pay off the remainder of the contract. And so not a lot of people know that he went financially broke after the tournament. He was ostracized from the community, couldn't really return without there being a lot of backlash. And this was a guy that like loved the community and he loved to TO and organize stuff. And after just one bad tournament and one bad, you know, financial decision, one bad estimate, he ended up, you know, ruining his life for a good chunk of his life, a good chunk for like 4 to 5 years. And so when we look ahead, the way that, you know, people put insurance on themselves is that they have to find things that are reliable. And so that's why if, you know, I'm not sure how much sponsors really give, but if a sponsor offers like $10,000 to $15,000, or they offer equipment, they offer furniture, they offer CRT systems, as a sponsorship, you have to kind of look at it and take it, because it's guaranteed money that you don't have to pay out. And if you're a Juggle Guy, you're a Nintendo dude, that's something you really need, because it's really hard to really sleep at night and say like, what if like I don't meet those numbers? And like I said before, most people don't register until the very end. I believe Paragon got half their entrance in the last minute, and it's really daunting to like not be sure if people are gonna sign up or not. And so, you know, let's say Juggle Guy, you know, prepared for like 1,600 people, and you know, people always give people crap for overestimating or underestimating. So Apex, their venue could only fit like 800 people, and a lot of people complain like, what the hell, like, why did you guys like get such a small venue? And so like you go like, oh duh, like I should have gone to a bigger venue, I wish I knew. But the flip side is, let's say Juggle Guy anticipates like 1,500 to 1,600 people for Smash 4 and Melee, and he gets 1,200 people. 1,200 people for a tournament's not bad, considering on average that's about 600 Melee people and 600 Smash 4 players. If, you know, there's no crossover, 600 is not bad, but you're still 400 short. And if you don't plan correctly, that's easily $15,000 to $20,000 that you're in the hole. And that's and for people like Juggle Guy and myself, that's a lot of money. That doesn't just come out of thin air, and I think a lot of people need to realize that. I hope that people on like Reddit Smash Bros really understand that, and that's why Running something like PM is really hard, because you run PM, you don't really get to go on and you advertise it as a PM tournament, then you're not getting your tournament on the front page of Twitch. It makes streaming a lot difficult. People won't really provide equipment for it. Sponsors may pull out. And so for a guy like Jungle Guy, and you know, that makes a lot of sense that he can't put PM in. And a lot of people go like, what about Paragon? Why is Paragon running PM? And to be honest, Paragon's a very unique case because the guy that's running Paragon is bankrolled very nicely. He's a very successful businessman. And so he can afford to, like, I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but I assume that if he were to lose like $50,000 on this tournament, then he would not, it wouldn't ruin his life. Whereas if you do that to Jogo Guy or Crimson, it would actually ruin their life, to have this $50,000 debt. And that's why Paragon can run PM. It's because the guy's loaded. I mean, he just loves the game, he loves the community, and he's willing to, you know, put in a chunk of his own money and risk it. And so I don't think that should be the norm. I don't think the community should expect that of TOs, and that's why we need sponsors. As the tournaments continue to grow, that's just the reality. And it's unfortunate because, you know, PM, like, I wish people knew that TOs like Joe Guy don't want to say like, oh, we want to kill the game, we want to kill the scene. But the reality is, it's also not fair to put that much financial burden on one person. And I hope that, you know, people really understand that's why we need sponsors and we need people to bankroll these large tournaments, because it's really unrealistic for, you know, a person to handle that much burden.